So thank you for being here. We're excited today. So last week, if you were here, Jared Legg told a story. So Jared's over here, and if you haven't seen the video about back when he was like a cop and he took out a bad guy, an officer-involved shooting, and he literally killed a guy. And he told the story about the repercussions of that and the pain and the challenges that came as a result of that, and how it ultimately led him to Jesus Christ. So that was awesome. And so what we've learned as a body of believers is that we all have a different path that we walk in Christ Jesus. And he calls us all to walk different roads, and they're different kind of challenges. So everybody in this room, if we're like, hey, tell me about your story, we probably sit there and go like, whoa, man, I can't believe you had to endure that. Like, that's so hard. I can't believe you're going through that. And sometimes you just come in on Sunday mornings and you see people and you see their kids or you see their faces and you think, that's a normal person, that's a cute family. Then when you get to know them, it just changes how you see them and the respect and awe that you have for the God that they follow. And so I'm going to invite a couple up here. They've been attending here now for a couple years, and we're going to dig in a little bit into their story. I think I forgot my question. Stephen, could you grab them? They're up on the top right there as you walk in there. But Kristen, can you guys give a warm journey welcome to Kristen and Cory Walters? So come on down. And if not, they might be out down the hallway to the right someplace on a thing, but I think I know most of them anyways. Come on up, guys. Come on up and make yourselves at home.
All right.
It's good to see you guys.
Yeah, you too.
And you got some family here?
We do.
With you guys? Awesome sauce. So this is Kristen and Cory officially, and you see them come in sometimes, and their kids are with you. But I want to give you a moment just to kind of tell us about your family and intro your family for us, and talk about them for a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm Cory. This is my wife, Kristen. We have 2 boys, Jake and Mason. Jake is about to be 7 next week, and then we have 4-year-old Mason.
All right. And so they come in here, by the way, this is so cool. And so they come in, and it's one thing to come in when you're in a familiar environment, but when you come in on a Sunday morning and you don't really know the teachers yet, and talk about just their transition and the whole sticker situation, it's so much fun. I look forward to it every Sunday.
I could talk about that. So Mason has really struggled with the transition of leaving mom and dad, and you'll hear a little bit more about that as we get into the story. But when we came in the first time to Journey, we wanted to put him in the kids' class because we knew he would do well there. Emily was the teacher, and we knew that it would be great. But he was not happy. He was screaming, crying. You could probably hear it all the way here in the sanctuary. And so we were talking about it, and we tried week after week after week, and he would cry and cry and cry. And Jacques came up with this brilliant idea that when Mason came in, Jacques would give him a sticker, right, a pack of stickers. And Mason thought that was the coolest thing. Yeah. So he looks forward to every time we come in, he gets a pack of stickers. And now he's great. He doesn't cry. He's so excited to come to church.
We'll do whatever we can to make you guys feel comfortable. If it takes stickers, we're going to use stickers. But I just got to tell you, when you walk in, I see their faces and their boys lit up. They're some of the cutest kids in the world. And it's one of those families, they walk in and you don't know the story behind them. And so we're going to dig into that a little bit. But I had the pleasure, by the way, years ago, 2018, of marrying you guys and doing the wedding. So I was kind of there at the start of that. But tell me about, so kids come into the picture. Is that something you knew? Maybe we want to have kids, like the moment you guys kind of became serious as a couple?
Yeah, so, growing up, I've got an older brother, so it was 2 of us growing up. And, Kristen has a younger sister, so there was 2, siblings in her family as well. So I always had the mindset of 2 kids. And I remember before we were kind of really official, we were kind of just texting back and forth, and somehow we got on to, kids. Oh, do you want to have kids when you grow up, blah, blah, blah. And Kristen was, on board, 2 kids. She said 2 kids. I said 2 kids, and I was like, okay, I think we got that one locked in.
Great.
We don't have anything else to worry about.
All right, so you get married. You're going through life. You're having that newlywed phase.
Yep.
And then along comes Jacob. And your entry into parenting wasn't exactly stereotypical. He was born 2 months early. And, it got real scary right away. So can you take us kind of behind the scenes?
Yeah. So pregnancy was rough. I was sick basically the entire time, was not feeling good at all, and pretty early into the second trimester, I started to puff up, right? I was looking pretty swollen, looking like I didn't feel good. And, the OB, the doctor kept saying, monitor your blood pressure at home, right? We're going to look at these things. And so I was doing that, and it started to creep up, and pretty consistently one day it was high. So I called the doctor. They told me to go into the ER. And while I was in the ER, my blood pressure was like 200 over 95, I think, which is like stroke range. And so this was at 30 weeks, which is, 2 months early. And the doctor said, you're going to have this baby tomorrow. Whoa. And so they transferred me. I was at Haymarket. They transferred me to Prince William via ambulance, like the whole nine. And it was terrifying, right, to know, like, hey, wait, I had been at work that Friday before. That was, I think, a Saturday. I had been at work that Friday before, and I had a big meeting, and one of my coworkers was like, oh, you look like you're about to pop. And I laughed because I was like, oh, I still have
a while to go.
Over 2 months to go, right? And then here we are in the ambulance. When you have a pre-me, or when you think you're going to have a pre-me, they'll give you steroid shots for the baby's lungs to help them develop a little bit. And they're supposed to be 24 hours apart. So they gave me the first dose, and then they ended up giving me the second one 12 hours later because they said, you're not going to make it 24 hours. Like, you have to go now.
Can I stop you for
ahead.
a sec? Cory, this is the worst spectator experience of your life. This is your wife, this is your child.
Yeah,
Man.
and I remember when we were at Haymarket, and the doctor looks over and she goes, you're going to be parents in less than 24 hours. And I remember looking at Kristen, and I'm like, wait, what? Like, we were not, our minds were not in that mindset.
Yet. We were not ready.
So, yeah, it was, and, I'm perfectly fine. All I am is just support at this point, right? I didn't have much to contribute, and I'm just sitting there watching, and, yeah, tough.
That's tough. So you're in the ambulance, you arrive at the hospital.
We arrive at the hospital, and they did the concoctions of medicines. I don't exactly know what it was, but whatever they put me on was actually working. And so they said, things are looking okay, right? You're decently stable. This is at almost 31 weeks. And they said, we're going to try and keep you on bed rest here until 34 weeks, right? The plan was to try and keep you there. And things went well for a day. And then, or maybe 2 days, I'm not exactly sure. But then I got really sick again. The medicines weren't working. My labs looked really bad. And I ended up getting pneumonia. So I was not doing well. And but at this point, Cory had already gone back to work. So we thought we were going to be there until 34 weeks. So Cory had already gone back to work. And this was July 5th, right? He'd been off on the 4th. He went back to work for the first time on July 5th. And in the morning, the doctor came to see me and was like, no, it's time. We got to go, right? The baby was doing some things we got to do. And so my mom called Cory, who was working at the State Department in D.C., and said, you need to get here now, right? So he's
Kristen was
home.
On the operating table.
I was on the OR table.
And they're waiting for me. They said, we're going to wait until you get here. And I don't think I've ever gone...
You don't think you've broke as many laws?
Never gone down 66 that fast in my life. And rushed there, and they're waiting for me, and she's on the table, and I walk in, and I'm like, hold on, I didn't even have time to adjust anything. Like, it was just straight in. And I don't do good in hospital scenes.
Cory is the guy that passes out when you get a flu shot. And so he walks in, right? And here I am. I'm shaking like a leaf because I had all kinds of problems. And the doctor said, oh, well, what kind of music do you want to listen to, right? It's in the OR. And stunned, I guess, Cory goes, Red Hot Chili Peppers.
It's not a bad choice. Gotta tell you.
So it was a pretty quick C-section, and I remember just praying, God, please let things be okay. We had the NICU team was there, and please let things be okay. And they pulled Jacob out, and you heard his little cry. And it was like the best sound. Cory and I just looked at each other and was like, oh, thank goodness,
Yeah.
right? Like, things are going to be okay.
Yeah.
And so the whole team, of course, does their thing. I actually wouldn't stop bleeding. There were some problems there. They had to figure all that out. But then, so Cory, I think you got to see
Well,
Jacob.
they took him immediately over to the other side of the operating room, and they were trying to regulate his body temperature and
All that.
get him breathing and everything like that. And Kristen was like, go take pictures. Like, if I
wanna
can't
see
see him,
him.
like, go take some pictures and then come back and show me so I can see him. And I'm like, okay, this means I got to stand up in an operating room, and this is not a good. So I walk over, and I remember I looked down, and the doctor had Mason in Jacob in a plastic bag, like up to his neck to try and get his body temperature to regulate. And I just remember looking down, and Jacob was like inside of the guy's hand, the doctor's hand. He was 2 pounds, 14 ounces. And I just remember I was in shock, but he was crying, and they were, watching the, all of the monitors and everything. And so I grabbed a couple pictures, and I'm excited to go back and show Kristen. I remember I turn around, and I see everything, and and they're like, Dad, you need to come sit down. Dad, you need to come sit down. And I'm like, all right. So I get over to Kristen, and I'm like showing her these pictures. And at that point, they were, I'll let you keep going
So
with
in his little bag, they brought him over for me to see for literally 3 seconds. That was it. And then he was whisked away to the NICU. The medicines, I was on a medicine called mag sulfate, which wipes you out. It's terrible. It wipes you out. And so like 6 hours later, I finally came to. And we got to go to the NICU. They had to roll the whole hospital bed into the NICU. Like, I couldn't even get in a wheelchair to go. And we roll up, and he's in his little isolette, and he's just like the tiniest thing I've ever seen, right? He's just, I don't think we put it on there, but there's a picture, like the little booger sucker things, like the little blue ones. He's like as long as that. And so he's just this little tiny guy, and he's sitting there, and he's got, all the monitors on, and he's got oxygen. But I stick my finger through the little hole, and his little fingers grab mine, and his whole hand fit on top of my fingernail. And it was like, that was the moment where you're like, oh my gosh, like it starts to hit you like, oh my gosh, we had a baby, and he's very early and very tiny. Not only was he born at 31 weeks, but he was also small for his gestational age, so he was small even then. But he was doing well, right? And so for the first day, he was doing well. He was in the NICU as expected, right? Things were going pretty well. And then late that night, early the next morning, the doctor comes into our room and said, something's wrong. I want you to be aware. And they showed us a picture of an x-ray and tried to explain to us that there was fluid in his lungs, which we later found out was blood. He had had a massive pulmonary hemorrhage, and he crashed. His stats were not good. He did not look good at all. He had crashed. And they told us he needed to go to a different hospital. Like, he was in really rough shape. He needed to go to Fairfax. And so we went to the NICU and watched a team of probably, 20 people trying to prep everything. He was already on a ventilator at that point, trying to prep everything. Inova has like a special ambulance that they send, and I was still really sick, and so they wouldn't let me leave. And I remember, you don't know what's going to happen, right? And so I kissed Jacob and prayed that I would be able to do that again. And so he went to Fairfax, and Cory went with him, and I was stuck in Manassas. And when he got to Fairfax, there was a million things that they had to do, right, to set him up and try and stabilize him. I later found out that the NICU doctor at Manassas, the one that had been working on him, that found the problem and working on him, said that he had stayed late. Obviously, he had stayed well beyond his shift to arrange to help with this transfer. And he said that he went to church after his shift to pray because he didn't think that Jacob would survive the transfer. But he did. And so when he gets to Fairfax, Cory's there with him, and my mom had stayed with me in the hospital, and they set him up on all kinds of things. And again, Cory doesn't do well with the medical. We know that, right? And so, they had to do all kinds of things, including, do you want to talk about the...
Yeah, so they, well, one, it was like I had to leave her and go with him.
Can't imagine.
And then now I don't know what to expect, and we get to Fairfax, and it was, I believe, UVA and Fairfax are the only two places in Virginia that have this specialized life support system that he needed to be on. And so they get him all hooked up to it, and they didn't let me go back until they got him all hooked up. And then I remember they said, all right, Dad, we're going to go into this room. You're going to be overwhelmed. You're going to see a lot of things, a lot of noises, and I want you to know that he's stabilized right now. And I'm like, okay. And so I'm trying to put into my mind, what could I potentially walk into seeing? And I remember I walked in, and I didn't even know what to say, what to think. I mean, there were hoses, wires, everything going all over the place. And I remember I was just, it was later that night, I was trying to keep her up to, speed with everything that they were doing. And I remember it was like 6 or 7 doctors and nurses came into the room, and they were like, he needs surfactant on his lungs because they did not want them to collapse, and then when they collapse, they stick. So it's kind of like PAM for their lungs. But they had to take him off of. It was like clockwork. All of them knew exactly what they were doing. They nailed it. But I am sitting there again.
Wow.
Just, what do? I just have to watch, and I am no help to anything, right?
So it's incredible. I just think of that. The whole time you're praying every second, every hour, praying for good news, waiting for bad news, praying for good news. Well, there's a side of you that's like we can't hear that, and you're hanging on. And we're not going to spend all the time on Jacob because you have 2 kids, but if you see Jacob walk in now, praise God for that. Just clap right now for. How did you get out? How did it happen that eventually he got strong enough? Was it just one day? It was like something changed, or?
No, he spent 2.5 months in the NICU.
Wow.
So we spent a long time in the NICU, and every day was something different, right? We often say that it was like 1 step forward, 2 steps back, but you do get some, incremental progress, and some days were good days, some days were not. He was not good at breathing, so most days we would see him stop breathing, the alarms would go off, he would turn blue, he would physically turn blue, and then everyone would rush in and have to help him. And, we graduated from the ventilator to the high flow to all kinds of different oxygen and, cannula. And when he eventually got strong enough to, eat and keep warm and generally kind of breathe, we eventually graduated from the NICU and got to go home. He went home on an oxygen monitor, and part of the stipulations with that was that we had to follow up with pulmonology. His breathing sounded terrible, right? It was very loud. He sounded like a freight train when he would sleep. So we found out later that he had a cyst on his vocal cords. So he had to have surgery when he was 6 pounds. And but after that, he started to eat better. He started to grow better. We did years of PT.
You talk about a huge scare, right, for any parent, right? Welcome to parenting,
right?
This is how it is. So way back when you guys first talked about kids, you're like, we're doing 2. We're going to have 2 kids. But you go through that, and that's your first kid. So what in the world made you think, all right, we're ready for number 2? And how did that all come to be?
I was not a fan of that. At that point, I was like, yeah, I think we're done. I get that we both wanted to. I was adamant about it only being Jake at this point, and after everything that we've gone through, with severe preeclampsia, once you've had it once, your chances of getting it again are much higher. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, you really want to, Kristen's like, no, I think I want two still. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, why would you want two after what we just went through? Then she talked me into two.
Yeah.
So even getting to the point of conceiving Mason was a challenge for you guys.
Yeah. We, yeah. I knew that we wanted to, and we talked to all the doctors about it. And when we finally did, agree that we were going to try, and we tried, and we tried, and we tried, and it wasn't happening. And so we talked to the doctor, and they sent us to a fertility specialist, and they ran all the tests, which all came back normal. And so we got this diagnosis of unexplained secondary infertility, meaning second baby. And
So wait, at this point, I just got to know, are you
Yeah.
like, I told you. I was right. Was that
There's
kind
signs.
But you can't say that.
Right? Absolutely not.
well, and that was it, right? Like, I felt so confident that we were supposed to, like, that we were meant to have two kids. And so then when this was all happening, I'm like, is God trying to tell me something, right? Like, is this his message? Like, no, you're done, right? Like, this is it. But we talked to the doctors, and we decided to do something called IUI, and it worked on the first try. And so that was my sign of like, okay, well,
Yeah.
maybe he does want it to happen, right? We're good.
Yeah.
So, all right, 6 pounds, 10 ounces,
Full
right?
term.
So full term, a healthy, happy, chunky, beautiful baby until he was 2. Tell us what happened the day after Mason's second birthday.
Cory was at work. It was a Monday. And I got up to get the kids ready. We had Mason's birthday party on his birthday the day before, and Mason was sleeping in later than usual. He's usually up pretty early, and I thought, oh, he's just tired from running around at his party. And I went in his room to wake him up and turn the lights on. He didn't really move, and he has like a tent on his crib, and I unzipped the tent, and his eyes were open, but nobody was home, right? Like, you could just see a blank stare. He was breathing, but like blank stare. And I tried to pick him up, and he was unresponsive. And we went to the ER, and they gave him all kinds of medicines, and they took us for a CT scan. And Cory went with him and held him in the machine, right? Like, he was on the machine. Cory held him on the machine. And I remember I was in the room where like the techs sit, where you can kind of see the scans come through, and CTs are quick, right? And so they did the scan, and I was watching the woman who was looking at the scan, and I see her look at her partner, her colleague beside her, and make a face. And so I instantly knew that something was wrong, right? Like, the face that she made clearly indicated that something was wrong. And they come back and they tell us that he has a brain tumor, a big one, and they didn't know what it was, and they wasn't sure. It was significant. Your brain has a center line down the middle, and Mason's brain tumor was the size of a softball. In his little 2-year-old head, it was the size of a softball. It was pushing the center line of his brain 12 millimeters. Yeah, you can see it there. 12 millimeters. Anything more than 5 is like a significant medical emergency. And so, once again, they arranged the ambulance to come take us to Inova Fairfax. And Cory and I, it's funny how things work out with different experiences, because we felt such a sense of relief that we were going to Fairfax because they had saved Jacob, right?
Well, they told us, they were like, yeah, you guys need to go to a bigger hospital right now. And we were like, Fairfax. Can we go to Fairfax, please? Like,
and so, yeah, he had this massive brain tumor, and we get to Fairfax, they do more scans, and they do more things, and then they talk to us about different options, right?
So what could they do? What did they end up doing for Mason?
Surgery is the answer to that. We met the neurosurgeon who was reviewing his case, and the neurosurgeon is a doctor who has significant experience he was the director of the hospital, he was the lead surgeon at Walter Reed, he has military and we felt so comfortable talking to him. He had clearly planned it out and told us, he was honest with us and said, this is big, this is vascular, this is risky. He said, we will not get it all in one surgery. He said, we're going to do what we can to get as much as we can. But he said, babies this little can't handle surgeries as long as it needs to be. And he said, so, we're going to take him, we're going to, relieve the pressure of the midline shift and do what we can. And 2 days after we found out about his brain tumor, so we found out on the 5th, he went down for surgery the morning of the 7th.
So he had surgery. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, so the surgery, they told us it was going to be 4 to 5 hours. And so, again, Kristen takes Mason back to the operating room. That's not my cup of tea going back there. So I remember I gave him a kiss and just watched them, walk down the hallway. And I'm like, at this point,
the same feeling that we had with Jacob, where you just hand over your baby and pray that they're going to keep him safe, that you get to see them again.
It's the worst feeling for any parent, and I know Emily and I have been down that road. It's the most helpless feeling in the world.
Yeah. And actually, before the night before the surgery, the neurosurgeon came and talked to us, and was explaining his plan and everything like that. And he mentioned to us, he said, "You might want to have your families come tonight." And I was like, "Okay." And then he left, and I looked at Chris and I said, "Well, why did he say that?" And we didn't want to believe what he was
intimating,
trying to say. So we had our families come that night, and that was just the worst, to just sit there and have no expectation of what to expect.
Yeah.
And so the next morning, Kristen takes him in. He goes back for surgery, and in the waiting room there's the TV with all of the patients, and green means they're in surgery, everything's going well. And we get to like 4 hours, and I'm like, all right, they said 4 to 5, we'll give them 5, but then we're trying to get updates throughout the surgery, and they're like, everything's still cruising, and then heard anything, and then 6 hours comes, and I'm like, all right, now we're way past the time frame that they told us he was going to be back there. So I go up to the front, and I'm like, what's going on? Do we have? And then all of a sudden it was like, boom, purple. It turned to purple, and that means that they're finishing up the surgery. And I'm like, all right, well, let's just sit now, and we're going to wait.
You don't have to beat anybody.
Yeah, exactly. And
he's on our security team.
So I remember we were sitting there in the waiting room, and the double doors opened up where we saw Dr. Moore's. And it was like the distance between here and those double doors felt like 10 miles away. And we made eye contact with him, and as soon as those double doors opened, he gave us 2 thumbs up. And I was like, a huge relief, right? But then I was like, all right, what does the 2 thumbs up mean?
Yeah.
Like, where do we...
You've been down this road.
Yeah. And he comes over to us, and he's smiling. He gives us both a big hug, and he goes, I got 100% of it. And we were just like, what? Like, talk about a roller coaster effect. That's something that in the hospital you get super highs, and then you get super lows, and then you get super highs again. And that, I remember, was one of the biggest highs that we had felt in the hospital.
With a 2 thumbs.
Yes, and I actually explained that to him, afterwards, and he was like, I know how far that is, that distance, and he's like, I had to give you something before I could get over to you. So,
wow. So, after the surgery, pain management is a struggle post-op. That's terrible.
Yeah.
When you're watching your kids suffer, we'll get to that later. But something even more alarming happened 2 days into recovery.
Yeah, they did an MRI the second day after surgery, and we were waiting for the results, and it was taking a long time to make sure that they had gotten all visible tumor. And it was late at night, and the residents came into our room, and they said, the MRI is good, right? They did well, but he said, we're so sorry to tell you this, but Mason has had a stroke, and he's had a stroke in the region that controls vision. And they just kept saying, we're so sorry, we're so sorry, we're so sorry, we're so sorry. And we kept asking questions, what does that mean, right? Is he blind? What does that mean? And they didn't have any answers. They just kept saying, we're so sorry. And it was really late at night, and we had been already up all day, and
But
we,
that's after
recovering.
a pretty big high there
Yeah.
too, right? Then you
Yeah.
get slammed with that, and
And
tough.
It was one of the hardest nights because, he had survived this surgery where it was very risky, and then now we hear that things went pretty wrong, right? And we didn't know what his future was look like, and we were questioning everything. Mason was really struggling with pain management, so he was very unhappy. He was just whimpering in pain all the time. He didn't open his eyes at all. He wouldn't open his eyes at all, and so you didn't know. And so we spent all night crying, praying, all the things. And the next morning, the neurosurgeon, who we love, came in, and he was all happy and jolly. And clearly we were distraught, right? We had been crying a lot. And he was like, well, didn't you hear the news? And we're like, yeah, didn't you hear the news? And he was like, it's fine.
Well, no, he walked in, and this guy has like this presence when he walks into the room. It's just like, all right, relief.
So comforting to know.
And he like popped open the door, and me and her are like bawling our eyes out in the room. And he looks over and he goes, those are happy tears, right? And we're like, I'm looking at him like, what? Happy tears? And that he thought that we were, crying because the MRI came back, everything was good. He did not know that the residents came in and told us about the stroke the wrong way.
The wrong way. Yeah, I'll save the details, but in short, yes, Mason did have a stroke in the area that impacts vision. What he explained to us, though, is that it's basically his peripheral vision on half of both sides. So like how, I can look straight and I can still see my hand over here. Mason can't see that. He'd have to wait until over here, but he can still see and he can still do all those things. And eventually we got the pain management under control, and I remember we had a phone, and I had pulled up like a Mickey Mouse. We're big Disney fans. I had pulled up a Mickey Mouse picture, and I put it under, because he wouldn't lift his eyes, but I put it under his eyes, and he pointed and said Mickey. And we were just,
I'm like, wait.
he can see it,
Like,
he can
grab the
recognize
phone,
it,
open
right?
the
Like
phone up.
we're flipping
And
all kinds of people.
We did,
What a
and
moment.
it was my sister-in-law. We put a picture, and he said, Bailey. And I'm like, get another picture. Like, let's verify this. We got to keep making sure that he knows who. And yeah, it just.
That's mind blowing. So it's like just a couple days earlier, he's shoving 2-year-old birthday cake in his mouth.
Running around.
And
doing
the
all things.
highs and lows of all of that, it's just mind blowing. Like how you're even standing and functioning at that point. Pathology comes back. And that's the first time as parents you hear the word cancer. The tumor was cancerous. And my baby had cancer. Like hits your mind. And even though they got the tumor, that reoccurrence with this is high. So how do you even process that?
It actually wasn't the first time that we had heard cancer, because right the night before the surgery, somebody from oncology came into our room to talk to us. And I specifically asked, we don't have the biopsy yet. Like, how do you know it's cancer? And she said, tumors like this are always cancer.
Wow.
And I think that that's one of those things you don't want to hear and you don't want to believe, and so we dismissed it, right? Like, I like data. I want to see the pathology, right? And it did. It came back as a cancer called ependymoma, and it's a pretty rare cancer. It's about 200 cases a year in the U.S. total. Some crazy statistics is that of the 200 that are in the U.S., the vast majority of them are in a different region of the brain. They're a different subtype. So there's only about 50 cases of what Mason had supratentorial.
Wow.
And then of that, there's, again, 2 subtypes, and Mason's is the rarest one. So there's maybe 10 cases a year of what Mason had of this cancer. And so with that, you don't have a lot of data to tell like what's going to happen. But recurrence rates are high. We know that. And so they talked a lot about that and what that looks like. We talked about potential treatment plans, and normally with brain tumors, the treatment would be radiation. But because he was so young and because it was they removed a third of his brain mass for comparison. They'd have to radiate half his brain, and they said that that would be devastating, that we're not going to do that. There are some chemos that can work, but have mixed side effects, including hearing loss. And since his eyesight was already impacted, we didn't want to do anything that could damage his hearing. And so our treatment plan is to scan frequently, and if it does reoccur, we'll do hopefully another surgery and try and get it out. Mason gets MRIs and CTs and all of that frequently. He's also very young. MRIs are long, so he has to be sedated every single time. He's got another one coming up in July. We do him every 3 to 4 months.
That was, you actually answered my question, was right there. Like, kind of what's the update on Mason now? So I'm going to jump to you guys for a little bit before we finish. So let me ask you this. As a parent, and any parents in the room know, like, the thing you want to do as a parent is find a way to make it better. How do I make it better? Kid rides their bike and they wreck and they skin their knee, and you kiss it and put a Band-Aid on it and give them an ice cream, and you feel like $1,000,000 as a parent. Like, I took care of it on big stuff as a parent. I made my kid feel better. You go through this and you're watching your child suffer, and you can't do anything to make it better. How do you cope? How do you guys cope with that?
A lot of hope. Prayers. I mean, it's one of those things that we lean on each other for. Something like that has, made our relationship stronger, our family's relationship a lot stronger. But it's hard to cope with, and understanding it was extremely hard for us. And
You do everything you can, right? Which is, oftentimes, like, I can't tell you how many nights we slept on a hospital floor, and you guys know the drill with that. And you also, again, I like data. I'm an engineer by trade, so I like data, and so I find myself doing all the research, and you become like an unofficial doctor, right? And you're advocating for things that you think might help, right? Even if it's maybe not the traditional treatment, but God gives you what you need. And so, it really, you rely on, your kid, and you know what they need, and you know how to make them, feel as good as they can. So a lot of times it's just cuddles and crying and snacks, all the snacks. But it's hard. It's hard to watch them do that.
So with everything that you've gone through and everything you're still facing, everything still in front of you, the continued scans, the knowledge of what might or the feel, like, how are you not just overcome with daily anxiety and parents, whether it's, name that issue that you're watching your child go through. It could be psychological, it could be physical, it could be emotional. How are you not so overwhelmed with fear and anxiety every day that you can't function? Like, how?
It's there.
I think that there is some of that, right? Like, the term helicopter mom, I am, right? I'll own that I see, kids run here, right? The kids running around and they fall and they scrape, and I'll be the first one to jump, right? And you'll see me like holding hands to make sure that they're not, falling on the stairs. And because of what we've been through, I definitely have a heightened sense of protecting where I can, right? So like, if I see that you're going to trip on the stairs, I'm going to hold your hand to make sure you're not going to do that. Parenthood is a humbling experience, right? Like, Cory and I, when we got engaged on a dirt bike track, right? Like, Cory and I used to do a lot of wild things, right? And we had big plans when we got married, and our kids are going to ride dirt bikes and race and do all these things. And now, I don't know, probably not.
Yeah.
I want them, it's a balance of like, I want them to have, a fun childhood, but also, be safe, right? Like, you guys are everything, and we want you guys to be safe.
I mean, the transformation you go through as humans going through this is incredible. I mean, by the way, the fact, if Cory's a groomsman from back in the day, if he would have told me, I'm going to be the sermon on Sunday morning one day, the laughs that would have gotten is unbelievable. But here you are, and you're hanging on hope. You mentioned that word. You're constantly praying. You're hanging on to each other. I guess the final question I have as we kind of bring all of this together, what did you learn about each other going through this? And then what did you discover about yourself?
I should mention that Cory and I have met our insurance out-of-pocket max every year since we've been married, right? I mentioned the dirt bike track. The day after we got back from our honeymoon, Cory was in a dirt bike wreck, broke his femur, had surgery, brain bleed, all of that, was off work for 4 months. And then shortly after that, I got pregnant with Jacob. So we've been through it with all of the different things. And marriage is hard no matter what. Marriage will always be hard, but you can choose to let these things break you or make you stronger. And we've been through both, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we have been at rock bottoms where, you can't stand the thought of, going through something, but then you recognize that you don't want to do it alone. And you have a partner who's there and who supports you and understands. And our families have been amazing with being there for us and supporting us through it all. And so I think that the big things about what's made a difference in our marriage is choosing each other, but also, with God at the center, the cord of 3 strands is not easily broken. And I think that that's what has made the biggest difference for us as a couple. And then, individually, I would say we each had some growing up to do, right? Like, living together and, the way that we raise our kids and do different things, right? We were raised, obviously every household is different, and there's been some give and take.
Yeah, and it's also the, how we handle things, how, everyone takes these challenges differently. And, there were nights where in the hospital, we'd get this news, and it's like, before I could really talk to her about it, and I was like, I had to understand it first. And I remember I would go over to the window and just look out of the window at Inova Fairfax, and you could see like all the way into kind of DC from the oncology department. And it was like that was my moment to kind of process everything before me and her kind of came together and understood what we were just told. And I had to explain to her first, like, look, I'm not ignoring you. This is just me trying to process this and understanding how each person handles something is completely different.
And give them the space to
Yeah.
just work through that their way.
Yep.
First of all, thank you. I mean, it's emotional talking about it, but you live it. And you've lived through that, and you've got whatever's in front of you. And every one of you sitting here, there's parts of the story that you probably identify with, getting that horrible phone call in the middle of the night, or going to the doctors and anticipating and not knowing what the news is going to be, or seeing your kid go through something that you can't make better. We've all got things that we can identify with in here. But if we could take those for a second and kind of shelf those, and I could ask, church, for all of you to bow your heads, and just as a church, can we pray for Jacob and Mason and for you guys? That would be awesome. Let's bow our heads and pray. Father in heaven, I thank you so much for your mercy and grace, for it's all over this story. And I can see your goodness, even in the middle of the challenges in this beautiful family. Father, we pray for your protective presence to be in Mason and in Jacob as there's little kids trying to enjoy life, and they've had to fight battles that some of us physically couldn't even imagine fighting. But you see them walk in with smiles, Father. They were fearfully and wonderfully made, created in your image. So, Father, we're here to say we're going to put our trust in you and our hope in you and our confidence in you, that they've got great doctors, but you're the great physician. And so, Father, we're leaning into you. Take care of those beautiful kids. And for Cory and Kristen, as they try to parent and work and just be as a family, facing everything that they have in front of them and all the experiences already that have just kind of wounded and broken and opened their eyes to just how tough life can be. Father, first of all, I pray that you just encourage them and that you would resource them, whether it's physically or financially or emotionally, spiritually, whenever they face whatever's in front of them, Father, I pray that you be the one that recharges their batteries. And Father, we thank you for your ever-presence in their life and for the impact that they're having here in Journey Church, that they come in here and they're giving and they're contributing and they're serving and they're loving. But I thank you for the way you're building into them. We love you so much. In Jesus' precious and holy name, we pray. And all God's people said. Amen. Can you put your hands together for Kristen and Cory? Thank you guys so much.